afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from our Dundalk terminal at the Port of Baltimore. Behind us, we have the Seagirt terminal operated by our co-host today, Ports America Chesapeake. As you can see, we have two major vessels behind us, Evergreen and Maersk, loading and unloading cargo here at the Port of Baltimore. The Port of Baltimore continues to be one of the few ports in the U.S. that has a deep enough channel to welcome these large vessels. Last year, the port processed 1 million of these 20-foot long containers behind us. Quite an accomplishment. We couldn't have asked for a better setting to kick off our 10th annual State of the Ports program. My name is Eddie Resende, and I have the pleasure of co-leading the World Trade Center Institute, the region's largest international business networking organization.
And I'm Lydia Yodi, WTCI's Senior Manager, and I've had the privilege of managing this program for the past 5 years. On behalf of our co-host, the Maryland Department of Transportation and Ports America Chesapeake, we welcome our guests who have tuned in today. We're excited to celebrate this year's event in this virtual platform.
Today is a day to celebrate and network with Maryland's global transportation community. To hear from Maryland's Secretary of Transportation, Greg Slater, as well as Ricky Smith, Executive Director of BWI, and Bill Doyle, Executive Director at the Maryland Port Authority. We also have a special message from Arnibam Basu of Sage Policy on the economic outlook for our ports and region.
For more than a decade now, WTCI has partnered with Ports America Chesapeake and the Maryland Department of Transportation to host this event. It's an opportunity for us to address the Maryland port community, who continues to make headlines despite the challenges we've faced this year. Earlier today, you had the opportunity to learn at one of our 2 breakout sessions, one on e-commerce and its impact on our ports, and the second on the future of global travel, sponsored by Collins Aerospace. We're excited to have with us hundreds of companies who play a major role in driving commerce at the port, including Bari Logistics, BGE, Baltimore Sister Cities, FedEx, Floor & Decor, John S. Connor, Mediterranean Shipping Company, McLaren Engineering, Saft Batteries, Under Armour, WWL, just to name a few. For those of you who are new to WTCI, welcome. We are the largest and most dynamic international business network in the region, with over 2,500 active global businesses. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization led by a board of top global business leaders and funded in part by a grant from the Maryland Department of Commerce. Please visit our website to learn more about our professional development programs, our educational global business events, international network, and member services.
We would like to thank and acknowledge our co-host, Ports America Chesapeake. As many of you know, parent company Ports America is the largest terminal operator and stevedore in the United States, with operations in more than 80 locations. Ports America handles all types of cargoes, including container, bulk, auto, and cruise vessels. In 2010, the Maryland Port Administration and Ports America began a 50-year public-private partnership to operate the Seagirt Marine Terminal behind us. This partnership generates nearly $16 million per year in new taxes for Maryland and has a potential to reach up to $1.8 billion in state revenue over the life of the agreement. The partnership has created many local jobs and provided the state of Maryland the ability to attract the largest container vessels on the East Coast to the Port of Baltimore. With Baltimore's increased capacity and the sheer size of the Baltimore-Washington-Philly corridor, our port is poised to be an even bigger global player, thanks to Ports America Chesapeake and its partnership with the Maryland Port Administration. Let's take a look at the scale and scope of Ports America's operations here at the Port of Baltimore.
to the promise.
The Port of Baltimore is our region's gateway to the world, and its reputation as an international business hub would not be possible without the work and expansion efforts happening at Seagirt Marine Terminal. Thank you, Bard. In addition to today's co-hosts, we would like to thank Collins Aerospace and board member Robert Sapatowicz, Terminal Corporation and board member Scott Menzies, Pompeian, who recently expanded its operations at the port, with board member Muna Asasui, Prometric and board member Kaywin Gales, PNC, Ball Term, P. Flanagan and Sons, WSP, and the Propeller Club. To set the stage for tonight's presentation, we've invited our good friend and partner Anirban Basu to share remarks on the economic outlook for our region and what it means for our ports. Anirban is the economic correspondent for WYPR and is the most reputable and recognizable economist in our region.
Hi, my name is Anirban Basu. I'm an economist at Sage Policy Group Incorporated. I'm also the chair of the Maryland Economic Development Commission. I've been asked to speak for about 5 minutes on the role of the Port of Baltimore in this region's economy. And of course, I could start out with some economic statistics. I could point out how well the port has done during this pandemic. The fact that in September of 2020, miraculously, we shipped more automobiles and light trucks than we did in September of 2019, which of course was a pre-pandemic period. I could talk about roll-on, roll-off export cargo, which was up 1.6% in September of 2020 versus September of 2019, even though the broader global economy has shrunk. I can talk about the recovery since the early stages of the pandemic in terms of containers and cargo and so on and so forth. And I can talk about some of the announcements that have been made by the likes of General Electric, Evergreen Line, the Metsä Group out of Finland committing to expanding at the Port of Baltimore. I can talk about all of those things, but you know what I'd rather talk about? I'd rather talk about the economics, the broader economics around the Port of Baltimore. And let's put it this way. There are 7.8 billion people on the planet. There are 6 million Marylanders. We're outnumbered. There are 1,300 human beings who live outside of Maryland for every human being that lives inside of Maryland. So, you would say we're outflanked, but it's not a zero-sum game. We want to engage the rest of the world, and it's really the Port of Baltimore that allows us to do that more than any other facility. Oh, I understand there's 995 and I-70 and I-83, a 495, and of course, BWI Airport and other transportation infrastructure, don't get me wrong. But, I don't know if any of you are Lord of the Rings fans, but if you have ever read the ring verse, the last two sentences read, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness find them. We'll set aside the darkness, but that's really what the Port of Baltimore does. It binds our intermodal infrastructure. It is the glue that holds it together. It's what makes all the other infrastructure components that much more important. And of course, that's one of the reasons that the people of Maryland, the taxpayers of Maryland, continue to choose to invest in the Port of Baltimore, whether in terms of dredging or other investments in the port's capacity. You can see why the people of Maryland do this. For instance, look at the real estate development taking place in and around the Port of Baltimore, including at Trade Point Atlantic. Those distribution centers would not be there but for the Port of Baltimore. It is triggering more economic activity, it's creating more jobs, it's creating a larger middle class in Maryland, and of course, a larger tax base. So there's every reason to continue to invest in the Port of Baltimore. Indeed, one of the things that we will see in future years is double stacking of containerized cargo on rail as we deal with this issue of the Howard Street Tunnel and other bottlenecks. It's going to be phenomenal. There's some other things going on in the world. We want to diversify our economy here in Maryland. We're pretty dependent upon federal government outlays. And as I'm speaking to you right now, the federal government is managing a $27 trillion national debt. The Highway Trust Fund goes insolvent within the next 1 or 2 years, the Medicare Trust Fund in 2026, the Social Security Trust Fund around 2033 or 2034. So we've got some issues. So to the extent that Maryland's economy remains dependent upon federal government outlays, whether in the form of direct agency employment or defense contracting or other forms of government contracting, we're going to have a problem one of these days when the government has to cut back its expenditures if the bond market ever revolts, which I presume it will at some point in the future. So the time to diversify Maryland's economy is now, and one of the segments that offers promise, of course, is manufacturing. We've been seeing a lot of reshoring of manufacturing activity to the United States since around 2010. Late last year, the Congress ratified the United States-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, the USMCA, and that creates even more inducements for CEOs and corporations that want favorable tariff treatment to locate more of their production in North America, including the United States of America. And so the goal here is, to try to attract as many of those jobs as possible. I understand our workers cost more than workers in Texas, the South Carolinians and the Texans and others have more land. They've got some advantages. People talk about whether or not it makes sense for us to become a right-to-work state, so on and so forth. Set those things aside. We've got the Port of Baltimore. We've got I-95. We've got Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York as our neighbors. And, a lot of people talk about the port's importance in terms of bringing goods to people, helping people access goods produced around the world. But of course, we are also producers. And the port enables us, perhaps, to gain some market share in manufacturing and other productive segments to broaden our middle class and diversify our economy as the federal government continues to rack up its deficits. So I want to thank you very much to the port stakeholders. I want to thank, of course, the people of Maryland for continuing to invest in the Port of Baltimore. I'm glad the Port of Baltimore is on our team, along with BWI and other forms of infrastructure that support our quality of living, our high standard of living here in Maryland. And we want to raise that standard of living for everyone in our state. And the port is going to be critical to doing that. So in any case, thanks a lot. It's a privilege to have been able to address you today. God bless you as we march toward 2021 and then beyond.
Thank you, Arnie for sharing your economic insights with the port community today. And now, without further ado, let's move to the heart of our program, the State of the Ports Address. Since the inception of the Maryland State of the Ports event, we have had the pleasure of hosting every transportation secretary, from John Picari to Beverly Swain Staley, Jim Smith, and Pete Ron. We are most honored to hear tonight from our newly appointed secretary, Greg Slater, as well as Bill Doyle, newly appointed executive director at MPA, and Ricky Smith, executive director at BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport. To help introduce today's speakers and facilitate the discussion, we have our good friend and co-host Bart Hogans at Ports America Chesapeake. Bart has been with Ports America for 22 years. Under his leadership, Ports America Chesapeake has made significant improvements at the Seagirt terminal. They have recently invested $120 million on expansions and plans for another $50 million next year. He is a board member of the World Trade Center Institute, the National Maritime Safety Association, North Atlantic Port Association, and the Steamship Trade Association. Bart is a native of the Eastern Shore of Maryland and currently resides in Baltimore County with his wife Kathy and two daughters, Ella and Claire. Hey, Bart.
Hey, Eddie, how are you doing?
Doing well. Hey, Greg.
How are you?
Doing great. I don't know. See, we have Bill, and I think that Ricky is having some challenges dialing in, but we're helping him out. He should be in with us in a few minutes. So, in case he can't make it, Greg, we're going to have to ask you to update us all on what's going on at BWI.
Sure.
So, Bart, go ahead and kick us off with our annual State of the Ports.
Great. Good evening, and thank you very much, Eddie, for the kind introduction. We are excited to co-host the program once again this year alongside WTCI in the state of Maryland. Tonight's really about being around so many influential business leaders and stakeholders who are tuning in today. I really hope everyone enjoyed our Seagirt expansion video. Really exciting a project, really exciting things going on down in the port. Our $120 million berth expansion project is now well underway. The 4 new cranes will be delivered in Q2 of next year with an upgrade of a second 50-foot berth. That's going to allow 2 14,000 TEU ships to work simultaneously in the Port of Baltimore. We're also now going to invest an additional $56 million in yard equipment, which will include 15 hybrid electric RTG cranes, as well as new gates for our facilities. We have a really exciting 2021 ahead, and I'm sure you'll hear more about it from Greg and Bill here shortly. One thing I would be remiss if I didn't start today by recognizing all of our transportation workers out there during these unprecedented times in our ports. So it's really from the airport to the seaport. It's a dedication and perseverance of these frontline workers that have played such a pivotal role in keeping our supply chains and economy moving during these times. I can say I'm truly grateful for the sacrifice of our employees and partners in the Port of Baltimore. Their health and safety will always remain my top priority. Again, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation for their efforts. So in addition to my role as Vice President of Ports America Chesapeake, I have had the privilege of serving on the WTCI board for over the past 5 years. I've always looked forward to this event as it provides us with a great opportunity to hear from Maryland's leading transportation officials As Eddie said earlier, we've heard from every secretary of Maryland's Department of Transportation over the past 10 years, and it's really been a great opportunity for stakeholders to get that vision of what's going on in the state of Maryland. Also, I would like to say, for those of you who are watching the Ravens game on their second monitor, as Greg, I think you keep looking to the right over there, and Bill, well, I'm not sure about Bill, but definitely I see Greg veering off to the right once in a while there, as long as myself. If anyone's watching the Ravens game on their second monitor, I just ask please refrain from sharing any highlights on the chat feature during our presentations. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's courtesy there. So over the past 10 years, as Eddie said, the annual State of the Ports address has been delivered by the Secretary of Maryland's Department of Transportation. We'll kick off today's presentation with our newly appointed Secretary, Greg Slater. You will hear from the new Executive Director at the Port of Baltimore, Bill Doyle, and the Executive Director at BWI, Ricky Smith. We will save our Q&A for the second half of the presentation, but please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A section of this platform at any moment during the presentations. Great, let's get started now. As I said, first we have up our Secretary of Maryland's Department of Transportation, Greg Slater. Greg was appointed by Governor Hogan to lead the department in February of this year. Greg has more than 22 years of experience at MDOT State Highway Administration. His career began in plats and survey operations, and today he oversees a department of more than 10,000 employees with an operating budget of nearly $5.4 billion. He is responsible for every aspect of the state's transportation, from highways, roadways, transit system, and airports. Greg, welcome today. It's a pleasure to have you deliver this year's State of the Ports. I think we're all very excited to hear from you. However, little did we know your first challenge as secretary would be to navigate a global pandemic that's not only challenged our state and our nation. So a great introductory to your new role. I think, though, we're all really excited to hear about, what your biggest accomplishments have been this year. What are some of the opportunities that lie ahead, and some of the challenges that we faced.
Thanks a lot, Bart. It's really great to be here today. And I do want to take a minute and thank Eddie and Lydia as well, and the rest of the WTCI team for hosting us today. As I watched the earlier video of Eddie and Lydia out on the docks at the port, I knew I was going to try and be out there, and it looked like a beautiful day. So I missed kind of being out there now. I was stuck in this office that day, but really great to see. Really, the Port of Baltimore and BWI Thurgood Marshall are truly two of the state's prime economic engines. So it's really great to attend an event that focuses on their contributions, not only to the state, but to the region and this country. And I'm happy to be joined today by Ricky Smith and Bill Doyle, who oversee our airport and our port facilities. Bill is relatively new to the Port of Baltimore, but he brings with him a lot of history in the industry, as well as a lot of passion and energy and big ideas to help lead us to success. And Ricky has led BWI Marshall Airport twice now with great success, and I've had the pleasure of working with Ricky over the last several decades in a variety of different roles. So, the future of both of those agencies looks pretty bright with these two gentlemen leading the way. A little bit about me. I've attended the State of the Ports in the past as a member of MDOT State Highway Administration's team, but this is my first time attending as secretary. I've spent 22 years at SHA before I was tapped to become secretary earlier this year. I couldn't help but reflect a little bit as you were putting on those introductory slides about the former secretaries, because I served every single one of the people you put up on that slide. And so, I remember in my confirmation hearings, I went back through and looked at all the secretaries, and I had served more than half of them coming into this role. So, I learned a lot of lessons from them. I learned a lot coming up in this organization, and really being the first secretary to come up in this organization and serve. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. And frankly, one that I think gives me a pretty unique perspective. So my experience has really kind of brought me to where I am today, but it's also given me a firsthand look at how our transportation system works inside and out. And what I've found is that our transportation system is one that affects one another, from our port to our airport to our highway systems to our motor vehicle operations to our toll facilities and our transit systems. Just as importantly as my experience has taught me how important our transportation system is to the residents and the businesses that we serve. Our job is to keep them mobile, keep them connected, and make this region flow. Our business needs a strong, efficient, and reliable transportation system to thrive. And MDOT is working hard with that in mind. And throughout my career, I've always been a big believer in partnerships and collaboration. I also know how important it is to use data and technology and innovation and creative solutions and advancements to drive our decisions so that we can make progress and make the greatest impact to our citizens. We're always on the lookout for the latest innovative solutions to Maryland's transportation systems, but that has really been the theme throughout my career. I tell groups all the time, very lightheartedly, that I built my career doing everything that nobody else wanted to do. When new and cool things came out, I said, yeah, I'll take care of that. I'll take it on. And so, I sit here today as somebody who was always the creative thinker, but always someone that wasn't afraid to take on new challenges and kind of see if I can get things moving. And so, while this event has primarily focused on port and airport facilities, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention briefly how the rest of our system has been functioning despite these challenges of COVID-19. I know Bart mentioned it. I came into this position, I've told this story a few times. I was down speaking at the Chamber of Commerce in Salisbury. I got a text from the governor's office that says, hey, can you be in my office in 2 hours? And I'm looking at my watch, I'm looking at traffic, and I'm thinking, I think I can be there. I make it in there, and so lo and behold, he completely shocked me and told me that Secretary Ron was leaving and he wanted me to take over. And I said, you're really catching me here. I got to go home and talk to my wife and make sure it's okay. But it was a ride from there. And I come into this position. We had the holidays. I had budget hearings and confirmation hearings, and then COVID hit. And so it's been quite a ride for me. But since the pandemic began, we've seen some pretty drastic declines across our transportation network. And these decreases have resulted in pretty devastating hit on our trust fund, which relies on really our motor fuel taxes, our titling fees, transportation revenues across our system to fund our capital and operating budgets. And we're talking about revenue declines in the hundreds of millions of dollars across our system. But despite these decreases, the port and airport have continued to be our shining stars in the region. Ricky and Bill are going to get into some of the really specific numbers, but I'm going to steal some of their thunder a little bit and see if I can get them to start using their markers and mess up their remarks. But I'll mention BWI Marshall first and kind of talk about they've continued to outperform our regional competitors in the region. And throughout this pandemic, the Port of Baltimore not only has maintained its operations, but we've set new records and we're outperforming last year. So I couldn't be prouder of the whole team, top to bottom, public sector and private sector, at both our port and our airports, who have just continued to perform and grow during these challenging times. But this pandemic has really put their value and their success in the region on display, and I couldn't be prouder of that. Marylanders and businesses really rely on these critical operations, these critical links in the supply chain to get them what they need. I'll tell a quick story about one of our state partners, Amazon. So, if you've gotten anything from Amazon during this pandemic, it probably came through the port or the airport. And so one example of that is how we worked with Amazon to prepare for this pandemic all the way back to January. So it was starting to hit the Eastern Asian market. We were starting to see some things coming. A representative from Amazon contacted BWI Marshall Airport with news that the company needed to prepare for an influx of new employees over at the airport, and they needed to be badged through our security processes. So, COVID-19 was at that time devastating countries overseas. Our health experts were starting to predict it was coming into this country next. And as a result, Amazon wanted to increase its workforce at BWI Marshall to handle that surge in those home deliveries. So, over the next 90 days, BWI Marshall started badging agents, issuing more than 1,600 badges to Amazon employees that are now working on airport property, helping our community members secure valuable jobs, but also keeping that supply chain moving at a time of crisis when we needed it. And the feat was accomplished on top of the agent's normal workload that issued more than 20,000 badges a year. So we talk a lot about our frontline employees that are healthcare workers, but we have a lot of frontline employees today that are working in the badges office, working on the docks at the airport or at the port, and frankly, working, driving our transit vehicles and carrying our freight across this country. And they're just as valuable to keep this country moving. And this is pretty remarkable, but without the dedicated efforts of our badging agents and all of those frontline employees, these delivery of goods would have been delayed, and it would have been delayed getting to our residents and our businesses, and they would have continued to suffer. So, we need them, and they were there when we needed them. So it's frankly important for me and important for us that we're there when they need us. So, we're really focusing on a bit of a different perspective today as we're delivering our transportation system. We're talking about door-to-door system delivery. And so at the port, we're partnering with labor to prepare for and thrive in that supply chain rebound, and we've been successful. But it really is all about door-to-door, from our port and airport to the commercial trucking industry and our rail carriers and our transporting goods to our stores and our businesses, and ultimately to the consumer. That means we need to continue to keep our roads and bridges in a state of good repair and moving at the same time. And so, although our budget situation will make it pretty difficult, we're still working hard to maintain what we have, but also plan for the future and make sure that we're there as part of the recovery plan for Maryland. One of the projects in particular I want to talk about that contributes to this door-to-door experience is on the Baltimore Beltway on 695. We're implementing new technology, innovative technology-based solutions to reduce congestion by actively providing relief and managing the traffic flow in changing conditions there hour by hour, and at the same time reconfiguring that infamous triple bridges where Interstate 70 and Interstate 695 comes together. It's been one of the region's worst freight bottlenecks year after year, and we're working to address it and keep that freight moving. But that's just one example of one of the efforts that we're doing, because we have a lot of others in the pipeline. And Maryland residents and businesses have frankly been with us in showing some resilience throughout this pandemic, but we have a long way to go. And as Marylanders continue to telework in this pandemic, our transportation system will continue to play that pivotal part in the delivery of goods, medical supplies, and essential items. Let me talk a little bit about P3s and highlight the port. Moving forward, we need to continue to come up with creative funding solutions to meet Maryland's transportation needs. And one creative funding solution in particular that has led the port's success today is P3s. Our public-private partnerships are just one funding mechanism that we've used with great success across the state, including the Port of Baltimore. I'll tell a story back serving one of our previous secretaries. In the wake of a national economic recession, we forged a P3 agreement in 2009 with Ports America Chesapeake. And that P3 agreement has allowed us to build the 50-foot berth, bring in those Panamax cranes at a time when we were cutting our program to the bone. And this P3 today has been the game changer that frankly has allowed for a lot of our success today. And so, we're again in the heels of a pandemic and a recession, and we're talking about a second 50-foot berth that's going to allow us to handle two 14,000 TEU ships simultaneously, and that being in the works and anticipated to be completed next year. And we're really excited about it because frankly, that's going to build the growing container business at the port and ultimately help spur that other public-private partnership we have with CSX and the Howard Street Tunnel. The Howard Street Tunnel is going to allow us to double stack rail cars and move cargo quicker and more efficiently through the port to market door to door. And as the furthest inland port on the East Coast, this project will be a game changer in attracting new business that will help the city as a whole, but the whole region. And if not for that P3 model, the Port of Baltimore wouldn't be the world-class facility that it is today. And so, and I'll add, if not for our great partner at Ports America Chesapeake, the Port of Baltimore would not be the world-class facility that we have here today. So we're going to continue to look for funding solutions like P3s that will help us build our budget, build our infrastructure for years to come. But it's about the right solution at the right time with the right partner that we did, like we did at the Port of Baltimore. So, just to kind of wrap up a little bit, I'm not here to sell everybody on P3s. Everybody knows my passion about creative solutions and innovative financing, but I just want to demonstrate how that P3 model has benefited our department and our region, and will continue to give us opportunities to fund other improvements across our transportation system, even during difficult times like this. So it's not always about those flashy P3s for a ribbon cutting and a big splashy project, but it's about bringing together teams to jointly solve problems today rather than waiting for tomorrow to solve those problems. And as I talked a little bit about earlier, we're going to be pretty tight economically for a little while. So we need to continue to come up with those creative solutions to fund major projects, but also keep our infrastructure in that state of good repair. We just completed our annual CTP tour. If you've not familiar with that, it's our Consolidated Transportation Tour. We did it virtually this year for the first time in the state's history. We run a marathon every fall where we visit every county in Baltimore City across this state over about a 6 to 8 week period and present our draft program. But we also hear feedback on that program and talk about what's important to our local partners. And throughout that process, our priorities have remained the same. We want to continue to work hard for Maryland, and we're working hard to maintain what we have. We want to keep our system where we can be proud of it. We want to plan for the future, and we want to deliver projects that continue to contribute to Maryland's economic recovery, like the Howard Street Tunnel, like the Purple Line, like the American Legion Bridge, like the Baltimore Beltway, like the AB connector at BWI Marshall, and like modernizing our business practices across the department like we're doing at the Motor Vehicle Administration. So it's just the parameters and dollars that have changed around what we're working with, but our goals haven't changed. They have to remain constant. So I want to assure you that we're working hard across this entire transportation system to ensure the greatest impact for every dollar. The port and airport are no exception. Ricky and Bill have been great to work with, and I'm sure they have a lot more to say about how things are going and what our port and our airport are facing in the future. But they have a lot of energy and a lot of great solutions. But as a department, what's important to me is we are people-focused, solution-focused, forward-looking with creative solutions and innovative practices. And that's what MDOT is going to be. And that's what we work with people like Bill and Ricky and the whole team to be. So with that, I'll take a pause and turn it back over to Bart.
Great. Thank you very much, Greg. I really appreciate that. I would just have to say that great insight into MDOT, the projects, what's going on. I can't say enough about, your vision in developing and maintaining our transportation infrastructure in Maryland, and, how that's a key to our economic success, not only in our ports, but throughout the state of Maryland. I'd also like to thank you. This past year has been, great working with you and Bill through these challenging times. It's really been your vision. I know the business community would agree with me that, we're really thankful for your leadership and your vision over this past year. It's been really great to work with, and I'm really excited to continue to work with you and Bill in the future and how we tackle these tough problems and find solutions there. I'm one that likes tough problems as well. So, all right, now we'll move on to our second speaker of the evening, our new Executive Director of the Port of Baltimore, Maryland Port Administration, Bill Doyle. Bill oversees the Port of Baltimore's 6 state-owned public marine terminals, which handle everything from autos to containers, break bulk, cruise, farm construction equipment, forest products. Prior to Bill's current role, he served as the CEO of the Dredging Contractors of America. Bill also served 5 years as a federal maritime commissioner and chaired the U.S.-China bilateral maritime trade consultations. Bill, I have to say it's been a pleasure working together so far. I've really enjoyed it. We're excited to have you here with us today. I think we all heard from myself, Greg, a bit there, and Anirban Basu, how the port continues to deliver these record high results amidst the global pandemic. We'd really like to hear from you on, what have been some of your biggest challenges so far in your new role, and, what's in store for the Port of Baltimore in 2021.
Well, thank you, Bod, and it is a pleasure working with you. You're a great, this public-private partnership that Secretary Slater spoke about, it is real. It is productive. And it does so much for the state of Maryland, the Port of Baltimore, and the entire region. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to Eddie and Lydia, WTCI. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here. This is my first time speaking at this center. This is World Trade. We are World Trade here in Baltimore, in the Port of Baltimore. Hearing from Anirban Basu, he touched on a few numbers, and I'm going to get into more in depth on what we've seen since the pandemic began, off the lows, and then I'll get into the path forward on Howard Street Tunnel and Seagirt Berth 3. Now that video that you just saw that came out on the Seagirt expansion, that video is amazing. I just want to say that seeing something like that put together with the animation and the real shots, this is a world-class port. We're going to be one of the best ports in the world. I look forward to bringing us and working with my partners in the private sector, working with Secretary Slater and all of our agencies within the Department of Transportation, but we're on a good path. So let me start. The Port of Baltimore continues to push forward during the COVID-19 pandemic. We remained open for business for all cargo operations throughout the entire ordeal. And we continue to see very positive trends. The low points this year due to COVID-19 on cargo were in May and June. So what I can say now in October is that cars and light trucks are up 165% off their lows in May of 2020. General cargo is up 35% from its lows in June. Containerized cargo, it's up 28% from the lows in June. And our roll-on, roll-off cargo, is up 15% from the lows in June. Now, that's off the lows. But here's a stat that's very impressive, and we can peel back the onion a little bit on it. We also, in October, had our first year-over-year gains in both containers and general cargo. So let me explain that. In October of 2020, during the pandemic, our volumes are up 10.5% over October of 2019, when there was no pandemic. Same goes for general cargo. Our general cargo in October 2020 during the pandemic is up 5.6% over October of 2019, when there was no pandemic. So what are we seeing, by way of example, on why we're seeing our containerized cargo increase on that month from October 2020 to October 2019? It's simple. It's the investments that have been made in and around the port and in Maryland related to e-commerce. It's only been over the past 10 years, really heavy over the past 6 years. It's your Amazon distribution and fulfillment centers. It's what you have over at Trade Point Atlantic with respect to Home Depot. It's the distribution and warehousing on 695, 70, 83, all the way around. We're reaching into Delaware and New Jersey, straight up through Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and out to the Ohio Valley. The e-commerce portion of what we're seeing is not just from the distribution centers. They are helping us attract more ships, meaning the shippers and retailers. We did an analysis yesterday that we've had 11, what you call in the maritime industry, ad hoc ships called to the Port of Baltimore. Now, an ad hoc is where a retailer and an ocean carrier get together and say, hey, I got to get my cargo to the consumer. I've got to get my cargo to the distribution centers with the brick and mortar store. It's clogged up somewhere else. We got to get it in. Where can we go? Baltimore. We've had 11 ships since July 18th be directed to the Port of Baltimore to get the cargo off the ships and to the consumers and into the stream of commerce, to the tune of almost 19,000 TEU. I want to now turn our attention to some of the business and brand names. This is World Trade. This is what we do in Baltimore. I think you can all relate to what we're seeing by way of new business and expanded business coming into the Port of Baltimore. Our recent new and increased business include U.S. Steel. Port of Baltimore handled more than 50% of new state-of-the-art thin slab steel caster from U.S. Steel's Braddock, Pennsylvania facility. Port is scheduled to receive 2,400 20-foot containers in addition to additional break bulk tonnage. Atlantic Chesapeake Auto Terminals at the Port of Baltimore. They're expecting more than 35,000 autos units in November, this month. Auto detail dealers in the market are reporting strong sales. I want to pause there for a second. January, February, March, April, the port was used as a parking lot. When the ships came off the vessels, they'd roll off and sit there in the lots because the dealerships were closed. Dealerships are now open. There's a strong demand for automobiles. The vehicles, the automobiles, are now off the port and onto the dealership within 24 hours. Grimaldi Lines. Grimaldi Lines use vehicle market to Africa is adding additional calls per month at the Port of Baltimore. Previous and new increased business include General Electric. Hyatt is opening a new gateway on the East Coast by moving more appliances to the Port of Baltimore and its distribution center in Perryville. Aldi Markets is increasing business at the port with projections for about 5,000 containers annually. Rite Aid, the drugstore, is new business for the Port of Baltimore. They are now coming into the Port of Baltimore. Big Lots. Big Lots is shipping cargo through the Port of Baltimore for the first time. Tractor Supply Company. It has increased its imports significantly through the Port of Baltimore. Restoration Hardware. That has additional containers scheduled this year and into next year. Levin Furniture. That is a business that left the Port of Baltimore several years ago. It finds the Port of Baltimore to be the most efficient port when this is a good story because the company had sold and then the owner came back and said, I'm buying that company back and I'm going to take that company into profit again and we're going to use the Port of Baltimore. MTC Logistics, that's our refrigerated and frozen food volumes. They're up year over year. They never went down. So the frozen food, if you look at COVID, frozen food, refrigerated food, everybody's cooking from home. Their business is booming. And they've invested a lot here in the Port of Baltimore. General Electric, the Port of Baltimore is handling what's known as heat steam recovery systems. Those are pretty good because they come in on these specialized ships. They go directly off the ship in Dundalk on the rail right next to the ship, and off they go. Siemens, the port is handling massive 385,000-pound transformers. And Elliott Turbo, 90,000-pound transformers are being handled for export as an export market. We've had some significant good news. I want to thank my staff, my security staff. My head of security is Dave Espy here at the Port of Baltimore. His security team helped the Port of Baltimore, MDOT, receive a top grade for the annual security assessment. That's the 12th consecutive year. And that's given by the U.S. Coast Guard Department of Homeland Security. On the environmental side, the American Association of Port Authorities awarded the MPA an environmental award for a demonstration project that removes excess nutrient pollution and increases the oxygen content in the water. Our great longshore workers set a record in August by handling 5,536 container moves off the Maersk Edinburgh. That is the largest amount of container moves off a single ship ever in the Port of Baltimore. Evergreen Line, one of the port's top container customers, added 2 additional ships in the past 4 weeks. These ships are coming through the Suez Canal as opposed to the Panama Canal. They wanted to get their goods through Baltimore. One of the world's largest international forest product producers, Metsä Group, out of Finland, signed a new long-term contract with Port of Baltimore, which also includes expanded operations, and starting January 1st, we will be utilizing 4 sheds and warehouses that have been underutilized and dormant for the past 6 years. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers signed an agreement for a $3 million study of the Loop Channel. This is in coordination with Ports America Chesapeake for the Dundalk Marine Terminal. What the Loop Channel is, it will allow for ships to come in to the end of the berths at Seagirt and loop right back out to the channel, instead of having to back out or sideways out through tugs. We've got that going with the Army Corps of Engineers. It was an agreement, grant, that's moving forward on the study. The federal government also announced a $10 million grant to MDOT MPA as part of a project to improve infrastructure at the Dundalk Marine Terminal against severe events, rain events, and possible future sea level rise and climate change. Howard Street Tunnel, it's on schedule. Early mid-2001, the agreements, NEPA, engineering, permitting, that should all be done. The Federal Railroad Administration is the lead federal agency. They are in control of the environmental assessment. In cooperation with CSX, Ports America, NPA, and the Federal Railroad Administration, it was a collaborative effort all the way around in order to get that environmental assessment filed. We don't see any impediments, and we should have that environmental assessment on the street sometime in January. Later in 2021, construction begins in phases. So when the environmental assessment comes out, it's not going to be an automatic, just start going in and chipping away and blowing the tracks in the Howard Street Tunnel. There are several pieces to this, including clearances and bridges on streets, both here in Baltimore and on the way through Pennsylvania. 2024, construction complete. That will be the start of double stack service into the Ohio Valley, from the Port of Baltimore into the Ohio Valley. With Ports America, Maryland Ports Administration, we have a team that's already up and running, identifying those retailers, beneficial cargo owners that are in the Ohio Valley. We consider it a 3-year landing strip that we're reaching out to all of them and letting them know we're coming. We're going to be bringing cargo. We're the shortest distance to the Midwest. We're shorter than Virginia. We're shorter than New York and New Jersey. And we're more efficient. Seagirt Berth 3. This is the one that we were talking about. You saw earlier. Dredging begins. And this is the MPA's portion of part of the public-private partnership. I want to thank Greg Slater again, Secretary of Transportation. We do have the money, and that dredging will begin this month. That's a $10 million piece of work that we are paying for from the MPA. Now, on the private side for that Seagirt Berth 3, Reconstruction of the wharf, berth, and pocket dredging by Ports America is ongoing and should be completed by spring of 2021. That's $50 million from that private sector Ports America company, our partner. In May of 2021, the super post-Panamax cranes, 4 of them, will arrive at Seagirt for berth 3. That's another $55 million that Ports America is paying for. Hopefully by the end of the summer 2021, all things being equal, Seagirt berth 3 will be operational and we'll be able to handle 2 14,000 TEU container ships. Those are the largest ships that can fit through the Panama Canal. We'll be able to operate them simultaneously from that dock, Seagirt. Bottom line, this remains very unpredictable maritime environment nonetheless with COVID, but I think we've got a handle on it. Anything could happen, but we think we've weathered the storm from an import-export. The MPA senior management staff continue to work closely with our terminal operators and customers throughout this crisis. I can't say enough about the employees here at the MPA. They have worked their butts off. 90% of us are teleworking. We have people coming in and out, it's a grab and go, but we're getting the work done. The operations staff, the folks down at the port, they'll stagger their days. Half the staff will come in one day, half the staff will come in the next day. They've done a good job. This has been a learning experience and a tough experience for everyone at the Maryland Port Administration. They're doing a good job. I also can't say enough about the International Longshoremen's Association. They really jumped on the ball when COVID started. The social distancing, the mask wearing, the sanitation, the hygiene, and behavior off duty. Because what we say is that you're not going to catch COVID on the job. It'll be what you do at night and what you do when you leave the job that you need to be careful, because you don't want to bring it back in and infect everyone. And they've done a good job. Finally, once again, Bob Hogan, thank you for your partnership. And Secretary Slater, thanks for giving me this opportunity. We're going to work hard with and for both of you and the entire community in Port Baltimore. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Bill. Great update on the Port of Baltimore. As you said, it's been a real pleasure working together. Really enjoyed, your energy, your vision. Really excited about the future of the Port of Baltimore. I look forward to growing our public-private partnership here in 2021. We are committed to enhancing the infrastructure here at Seagirt Marine Terminal. I did want to touch on real quick, and I know Secretary Slater brought it up there as well. Bill, I know you and I feel that the Port of Baltimore is the e-commerce gateway here on the East Coast. And Greg, I heard you talk about it earlier, and I think Anirban touched on it earlier. We are that inland port. We are that e-commerce gateway, and I think we're really seeing that with the way cargo is coming through the Port of Baltimore. You talked about some of those ad hoc calls that we've been receiving. E-commerce is really driving a lot of that. Thanks again, Bill. Really look forward to working together in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, now I think we do have Ricky on the phone with us. Eddie, is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. Well, we'll move on to our last presentation, the Executive Director of BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport. Ricky has been the director since 2015 and is responsible for overseeing all aspects of aviation in the state of Maryland. He has nearly 30 years of experience in the transportation industry, previously served as CEO of the Cleveland Airport System. Ricky, it's a pleasure to have you with us here today. Needless to say, the travel industry, not only air travel, but also cruise, have been one of the industries that have been truly devastated by COVID-19. Here earlier today, we had a breakout session that focused on what the future of travel looks like. I was wondering if we could get some insight from you on major shifts, trends that you're seeing at BWI, how 2020 is looking, and then maybe a bit of a look into the future on 2021 and the future of air travel here in the state of Maryland.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you, Bayard, for the introduction. Let me also thank Eddie, Lydia, and especially Wally, who tried to work with me to get me up on video. We weren't successful, not because of Wally, but because of my own infrastructure here. And so I apologize for participating over the phone, but hopefully I will be equally as informative, even though I'm not there with you via video. I also want to thank, in general, the World Trade Center Institute for continuing to play the role that you play in promoting the importance of the ports, both the Port of Baltimore and BWI Marshall Airport. We appreciate your ongoing work, and it's a pleasure working with you. So just to give some insight as to how BWI has transitioned over the last 8 or 9 months, in the early weeks of this pandemic, when airlines slashed flights and passenger traffic was virtually non-existent, I must admit I was so proud of the important role that BWI Marshall Airport employees played throughout this pandemic. As the busiest airport in the region, BWI Marshall is an important economic engine and transportation resource for Marylanders and others in the National Capital Region. The airport and our airline partners remained in operation to support critical commerce, emergency response, cargo operations, and national defense. And to this day, BWI Marshall is operating with significantly lower passenger and airline traffic than normal. Key functions related to safe operations continue despite the reduced traffic levels. Our highest priorities remain the health and safety of our customers and employees. And to that end, we are committed to protecting our passengers and safeguarding those employees. As Greg mentioned earlier during his remarks about his appreciation for and his care for his team members, the same is true with us throughout this crisis. I've offered my deepest thanks to our employees and partners to play such an important role in keeping the airport safe in this holiday season. I don't want to waste the opportunity to thank them again for their critical work throughout the pandemic to maintain operations on behalf of our customers. Our employees and our stakeholders are really doing a tremendous job in a very challenging environment. MDOT employees in particular, our custodial service employees, our contractors, our airline partners, our food and retail concessionaires, the TSA, FAA and Customs, and many other stakeholders continue working together on behalf of our travelers. Greg talked earlier about the particular role our badging agents played in helping Amazon process its workforce, and that's just an example of how dedicated the workforce here at BWI Marshall Airport. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the public health leaders and Governor Hogan for their leadership on the issue of virus response and recovery. In recent weeks, the Governor has spoken to people in Maryland to emphasize that now more than ever, we must remain careful and vigilant. At BWI Marshall Airport, we are in the travel business, and we love to see a busy airport terminal and full flights. The Governor is absolutely correct that we want people to celebrate the holidays, but more than that, we want people to be safe and healthy. So before the Thanksgiving holiday that just passed, the Maryland Department of Health and the CDC issued expanded travel advisories. At BWI Marshall, we continue working to do what we can to protect our employees in compliance with those advisories. But despite the holiday season, non-essential travel outside of Maryland should continue to be avoided as it was during the Thanksgiving season. That message continues to be our message. And while personally it is sad to see a quiet, relatively empty airport with fewer passengers than normal, it is a good sign, an important sign that people are staying home to keep others healthy. There are some encouraging signs, however, despite the traffic drop-off Prior to the pandemic, BWI Marshall was on pace for a new passenger record in 2020. However, the COVID-19 impacts began in March in 2020 as airlines cut service and passenger traffic began to drop off. However, while passenger traffic remained well below a typical summer, BWI Marshall did experience some improving numbers in the recent months. Our numbers continue to recover slowly from their April low. About 90%, 96% drop off is where we were in April compared to April of 2019. The majority of the capital region passengers continue to use BWI Marshall. In fact, in June and July, the passenger total at BWI Marshall was more than Reagan National and Dulles combined. That's unheard of, not something we would ever foresee, but it speaks to the importance of BWI Marshall in the National Capital Region. Throughout the summer, BWI Marshall was a top 15 airport for domestic travel, which was very strong. That's well ahead of our usual placement, where we're normally around the 22nd busiest airport in the country. During the pandemic, we've been in the top 15. Currently, passenger traffic is down about 60% from the same period a year ago. Certainly not where we want it to be, but it's better than it was back in March and April. And as the vaccine begins to kick in, we hope to see traffic begin to return. From a market share perspective, we currently serve nearly 50% of the 3 airports in the Washington region. We're normally around 37, 38%. So again, 50% speaks to how strong we've recovered during this pandemic. So that is well ahead of our usual placement. Moving on to cargo traffic continues to climb at BWI Marshall as well. Over the past 12 months, cargo shipments increased 18%. The growth since the start of the crisis continues. The strong increases in cargo operations that we have seen in recent years at BWI Marshall. The airport worked closely with state government and the private sector to attract a new cargo operation and hundreds of new cargo logistic jobs in 2017. Greg spoke about this earlier. The Amazon Air operation has driven the significant growth in air cargo operations at BWI Marshall. FedEx, UPS, Airborne are all part of our cargo family, and they too have shown growth during this period. As I closed, I just want to hammer on the point that BWI is well positioned. The aviation industry has been decimated by the global public health emergency. Without question, this is the largest challenge of our industry and the largest that we've ever faced. But at BWI Marshall, we will remain well positioned for growth and success. So we are confident that as vaccines are rolled out, travel will continue to rebound. There's no question that the road to recovery will be a long one. However, we know that it will be years before the airlines reach their peak levels of 2019. In the meantime, we appreciate the contributions of all our essential workers during this health emergency. And for our customers, please know that we miss you. We miss travel. We miss our smiling faces on our passengers. Thanks to those of you who are choosing to stay home now so that we can all leave home later. Together, we will get through this challenging period, and we will see you again when the time is right. So that's an update on matters at BWI Marshall. I'll turn it back over to you, Bayard.
Great. Thank you very much, Ricky. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your insights into what's going on down at BWI Marshall Airport there and what's really happening in the airline industry. We understand it's, really been impacted similar to the cruise industry there. I think we're, to your point, very excited about, a vaccine and really a strong second half in the airline travel industry in 2021. Eddie, I would like to thank you and Lydia, great job on the event today. I would like to thank the panelists. Greg, thank you very much for delivering a great state of the port. Bill, thank you very much for your insight into the Port of Baltimore. Ricky, thank you for getting us up to speed on BWI Airport. Eddie, I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Thank you, Bard. And I'm going to ask if my other co-CEOs, Susan Applin, could join us, and Lydia Yodi as well. I know that they're on this call here today. Susan is going to be joining us in a few seconds. But we just wanted to thank the four of you, Bard as our co-host and partner on this for so many years. Thank you for your continuous commitment. To Greg, Bill, Ricky, MDOT, BWI, and the port. We have had this 30-year long-standing partnership, and we're so thankful for everything you do in leading these major organizations that are economic engines for Maryland and this region. And we couldn't ask for better leaders to help us navigate these departments throughout these very difficult times. So Susan and I and Lydia want to just thank the four of you for making the time, for supporting this initiative, so that we can continue to share every year a message from the state to the business community and so many companies that are transporting, exporting, importing through the ports, which are so important. We obviously want to just thank our team as well for all their hard work. And a special thank you to Lydia, who's the program manager and helped to bring all of the different pieces together. It's the first year ever that we're doing this panel style, and it was Lydia's idea. And we love it. It's just an opportunity for us to hear from all of you, especially the newly appointed executive directors. And we want to thank you so much, and we appreciate you being on the board. We appreciate your partnership. And happy holidays to all of the attendees that are with us today. We went a little bit over, but we had a lot of good information to share, and we're cautiously optimistic for 2021, but excited for the results that we've seen so far, and we're going to get out of this strong. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you. It has to be better than 2020, right?
That's right.
Better. Thank you all so much. It was so great to hear from everyone. Ricky, thanks for being here. Everyone, Bard, thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
We appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank
you.
Have a great night, everyone.